Committee stage next sitting day. Call on Government Orders of the Day numbers 4 and 5.
Regulatory Reform Bill, interrupted debate on second reading. Regulatory Reform Repeals Bill, interrupted debate on second reading.
Members, when we were last debating these two bills, the Honourable Leanne Dalzell had the call and has 2 minutes remaining if she wishes. I'll seek the call from Dr Russell Norman.
Thank you very much. Mr Speaker, this bill is a bill which combines many parts of it. I'm speaking particularly to the Regulatory Reform Bill rather than the Repeals Bill. And looking at the Regulatory Reform Bill, there are some parts of it that I think are very good and some parts that we have some concerns about. And this, of course, creates a problem because there's some things that are good and some things that are problematic. The good parts of the bill are, that I'd like to focus on in my brief talk here is about credit unions and building societies. In the finance sector, we know that the finance sector in New Zealand is dominated by the large overseas-owned banks, and that creates a real problem for the New Zealand economy. There's a very large fiscal drag, basically a huge drag on the New Zealand economy as $2 billion a year goes over to Australia. So encouraging the credit unions and the building societies is an important thing for us to do. And there is a very important element within this bill that will make it easier for credit unions and building societies, which is removing the $250,000 cap that currently applies to them in terms of the size of deposits they can accept. $250,000 used to be a lot of money, but these days, if you sell a house or if someone dies in your family and the family house is sold, you will often get more than $250,000 and you can't deposit it in a credit union as things stand at the moment. So removing that statutory cap to the amount that can be deposited in a credit union, as this bill does, I think is a very, very important development. And given that it is the International Year of Cooperatives, in fact there's an event happening straight after we rise for the dinner break, just next door just next door, it's very important that we support cooperatives. The Green Party has been a long supporter of cooperatives, unlike most parties in this parliament, particularly the government party who opposes cooperatives. And the Green Party thinks that this is important development because if we don't actually support cooperatives and the alternatives to the banks, and of course the government is a big supporter of the banks and does everything it can, and the Honourable Maurice Williamson, of course, is a big supporter of the Australian banks. That's why his government constantly backs them and supports them. Whereas the Green Party think that we should be supporting the credit union sector and the building society sector so that we have some competition in the finance industry to the big Australian-owned banks. So there is that element of this bill which is very good. Now there's another element of the bill which isn't so good, and that is around the changes to concessions in the conservation estate. That part of the bill we have some concerns about whether it will actually make it easier for destructive commercial activities to occur on the conservation estate. There are lots of concessions on the conservation estate that are good and are non-destructive. Ecotourism and all sorts of ventures that occur are very positive. But there are some parts of the concessions that occur on the conservation estate that are problematic. Obviously mining is one of them, but it's not the only one. Sometimes large-scale tourism ventures can be problematic for their impact on the conservation estate. So Part 4 of the bill, which makes amendments to how concessions are dealt with on the conservation estate, is a more problematic area. So this is a case of a bill that has some very good and important elements in terms of establishing some, supporting the credit unions in their competition with the large Australian banks, and also has some elements of it that are problematic in terms of creating issues around the use of the application for concessions on the conservation estate. And that's the nature of a large bill like this that combines all the different elements. Mr Speaker, this is an important bill. At this stage the Green Party won't be supporting it because of the elements around the concessions on the conservation estate, but we will be moving amendments at committee stage to see if we can improve the bill, because there are some very good elements of this bill that we would like to support.
Mr Speaker.
Ko Kanwaljit Singh Bakshi.
Mr Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity